Now, let's talk about a very important anniversary, a sad anniversary, unfortunately, for our state. A deadly F4 tornado on this day in Wichita Falls back in 1979. And Rich, you were there covering this storm, this tornado outbreak, really. Take us back to that day and tell me what you remember.
One of the first things I remember in writing about it was how awful the day was. It was one of those days that was just humid. You walked out the door early in the morning on my way to work, and it was just sticky. And it was going to be one of those days where you knew storms would happen because the setup was good. We had a cold front coming in from the west, a warm front had already passed to our north, and there was a strong upper level low in the general area. It's like, okay. And we had talked about that on April the 9th, saying, you know, this is going to happen. We're going to have some activity on Tuesday, and just be prepared for that. Make sure that you have a way of getting weather warnings by watching us, because there were only 3 TV stations back then, and the radio stations too. But it was the ham radio operators and the National Weather Service working in tandem, getting information to us that we could get during the middle of the afternoon when the first tornado hit Vernon. But once the tornado hit Wichita Falls, when it touched down southwest of where our building was, we got knocked off the air. And if you've ever had that helpless feeling of, you know, my gosh, I can't do anything now. I can't talk to our viewers.
Right.
Because there was no power.
And it's not like this thing was little. I mean, you can see, as we can now look back at it, and we have the data. I mean, this thing was 1.5 miles wide. It's a huge F4 tornado, and intense damage within that 1/4 to 1/2 mile. And I'm sure what probably sticks out is some of the damage afterwards, because these numbers, to me, are astounding. I mean, we're talking thousands here.
The southern part of the city and the eastern part of the city were hit the most. Where I lived, which was north of the station, not touched at all. So you see the number 1,700, at least 1,700. That's at least. There were likely more that maybe they didn't know about, but the emotional injury far exceeded that 1,700, because even those of us in the media, we just felt like we had been hit by something, even though, for example, my home didn't get hit, but some of my coworkers' homes did.
I mean, this is 1979, too. We're talking, you know, close to 50 years ago, more than 30, 40 years ago. Wichita Falls ain't that big, you know? Even so, you consider 40 years ago, that kind of number as far as injuries. It's just, you knew somebody somewhere, you knew had an impact, whether it hit your house or not. And unfortunately, it did claim the lives of 45 people.
45 in Wichita Falls, 3 in an earlier tornado in Vernon, 1 in Lawton. But the statistic that just made us cry, really, was 25 vehicle-related, 16 left their homes, and 11 had their homes untouched. And you just feel so helpless, which is why we always stress that the worst places to be when we have severe weather, in your car, mobile home.
Absolutely. There are no safe places, unfortunately, in a car and in a mobile home. You have at least a fighting chance in a structured home, but you're right, those numbers are sad.
It's one of those things that it happened 44 years ago today. It's just like it happened yesterday. You remember where you were at every point of the time until you got knocked off the air, and then we wouldn't be back on for another 24 hours. And then what do you say?
Yeah.
You know, because still some people didn't have power, but those that did, it's like, what do you say to them? And the best that we could do was help is on the way.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
then hope that the weather cooperated so that it didn't rain on the damage, so that people could sift through the pile. Yeah. So it was hell.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you sharing your experience. If you'd like to read more about the Wichita Falls F4 tornado back in 1979, Rich wrote a blog, which you can find on our website, KXAN.com.